Good evening, everyone. I want to talk about spiritual wisdom this evening. And I've got a passage from James that I will share with you. Who is wise and understanding among you tonight? Let them show by good conduct that their works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, don't boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And then I like the passage because it's linked to it in James 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. In fact, James 1 verse 19 to 20 is the summary of what's to come in James. So he will talk about hearing the word, not just hearing, but doing. He will talk about the tongue and the power of the tongue. And he will also talk about being angry. And so a shortcut to wisdom is this. Are you quick to listen, or are you always the one that's giving your opinion? Are you quick to listen and slow to speak? And are you slow to become angry? Okay, just throw that out for some. But here, spiritual wisdom. I want to talk first about wisdom that comes from below. We have a picture here, wisdom from above and wisdom from below. So what is wisdom that's from below? What does that look like? Well, in the passage, it first talks about bitter envy. Now, the Greek word for envy here in this passage in James 3, verse 14, is a word that means zealous, zealous. So this is the sort of energy that comes from envy of other people. Now, most of us think of envy as something that is, ooh, I wish I had your car, or, oh, I wish I had your watch, or, oh, I wish I was going on the holiday that you're going on. And that can be envy, but it's a little bit more than that. This is talking about wanting what somebody else has, wanting, say, their position, their honor, their job. In other words, envy is about wishing to steal from somebody, and not just stealing things like I said, oh, I love your car, I'm envious of it. No, you want to take from them. You don't like you don't like the fact that they've got something, a job, a position, a wife, an honor, a success, and you don't like it. And consciously or unconsciously, you want to bring that person down. If you can't get higher than a person, then what do? You bring them down. In America, they're known for loving heroes. They always like a winner because they look at a winner and they say, wow, what a great winner in sports, media, business. What a great winner. I'm going to be just like them. That's what they do in America. In Britain, there is a British trait that's quite envious. We don't like to see people successful. And when somebody gets too successful, we often, as British, want to cut them down a peg or two. And it's not always because they're proud, it's because we don't like the fact that they're doing so much better than us and having things that we don't want. You see this often in the media, in newspapers, tabloids, well, not just tabloids, actually, there's very little difference between them all now, love to cut somebody down. And they will use all the sort of like justifications about how this person is this and this person's that, and they relish it when they find something that they can grab onto and pull them down with. And often it's envy. They don't like that these people have got something, a position, influence, or whatever it might be, that they don't. So this envy can come in many different forms, okay? As I said, I think sometimes when people think of envy, they just think it's like, oh, I'm so, some sort of, oh, I'm so jealous about that suit that you're wearing. Oh, I'm so jealous that you're going to Spain. Oh, I'm so jealous. And all of that is not really harmless, really, isn't it? But this is when we see somebody and we resent what they have, who they are, and really we would like to have what they have. And if we can't have it, then we'll put a spanner in the work and at least bring them down in the estimation of other people. And that is earthly, sensual. It also says in verse 14 that if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your heart, don't boast and lie against the truth. So there's that sense, isn't it? I've already sort of mentioned that self-seeking. I'm envious because I want that to be like that, and I don't like it. So I'm going to bring somebody down. It's not just envy, it's bitter envy that brings energy with it to bring somebody down. And that can be done in very sly ways. It's not always, this obvious bitterness and self-seeking against somebody or another group of people. The human beings are very clever in the way that they justify their envy of others or their self-seeking. They seek to put people down. They seek to focus on their faults. They readily spread gossip, and they speak to others about, well, they may have a big church, but they don't really preach the word, or they may have a big church, but they don't do discipleship like we do. Well, those things might be said in an honest way of assessing what's going on, but often what's behind that is the fact that we don't like that church is bigger than us, and so we're going to say they're bigger than us, and we're worried that means they're better than us, so we'll cut them down a little bit because they're not as good as us in other areas, and anybody could have those crowds if they did what they did. It's that type of thing. But this can be done at a personal level. It can be done in a workplace. And it says, don't have bitter envy. It's bitter, self-seeking in your hearts. Don't boast and lie against the truth. This is where, in this sort of wisdom, there's this self-justification that you do. You find a fault, and therefore you're lying to yourself and you're lying to the truth that deep in your heart, you're bitter, you're envious, you don't like their success. And so what do? You justify it. You think of 100 ways to justify it. You look at others to justify it, and you begin to actually, boast about it in a sense. You begin to say, well, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want their job anyway, to be honest. Yes, you would. You liar. You know what I'm saying? It's this sort of justification and boasting. But the truth is, look, you've got envy in your heart. You wish you were them. You wish you had what they had. You wish this, you wish the other. You're self-seeking. It's like, I want that. I want the other. I want the position. I want the authority. I want the I want the glory. I want. But you're covering it all up with lies to yourself, because you have to, and then to others, and you're energized in doing this. Now, the next verse says, "This wisdom doesn't descend from above." Now, you say, is that wisdom? It's worldly wisdom. You could see it. I mean, your classic bitter envy and self-seeking, and hypocrisy, which it mentions in a moment. Your classic is politics. Not all politicians are like this, but the stab in the back, the desire to be prime minister, the envy of that, and so people, get into groups and trade. What will you do if I support you? And all these types of things, and so you get that Machiavellian political wisdom. I mean, I wouldn't encourage you to read Machiavelli unless you want to know how people work out. How people deal with each other in the world, in their craftiness. I got hold of a book, which is an excellent book, and it's called something like, I haven't read it for years, the 41 or something Laws of Power, something like that. And what it does is it goes through history. It's a historian, and it talks about how people manipulate one another in order to get the glory or to take their position away. And it's so full of clever, deceitful, making yourself look good, making them look bad, and all these types of things. But this wisdom, thank you, Robert Greene. That's the guy, Robert Greene. Thanks, Sasha. But this is very clever. It's a wisdom. It's people can do things. People can get places through these crafty Machiavellian ways. But this wisdom, even if somebody makes it work for them for a while, seemingly, it does not descend from above, God says. Okay. In the end, it never works, but it works for a while for some of these people. But it has three elements. It's not from above. It's got nothing to do with God, but it's earthly. That's the first word. Sensual. That's the second word. Demonic. That's the third. I remember reading Derek Prince on this passage, and this worldly wisdom that is energized through envy, self-seeking, in the rat race of pulling people down and manipulating people in order to get yourself up. And he said that there's a progression he feels here, that it starts in earthly. In other words, it's got nothing to do with God. It's about techniques and manipulations of others that's got nothing to do with God. You're just using it in order to get yourself forward. You're crafty, you're devious, you say one thing and do another. And he says that's earthly. It's the human way of thinking without God. It's earthly wisdom without God or heaven's influence. But he says, but when people do this, it becomes sensual, fleshly, and it sort of degrades people and humanity. So it's earthly wisdom, and then it gets sensual, it gets fleshly, and all the things that the works of the flesh are and the characteristics takes it to that. And then it opens up the demonic for demonic influence. It's like a landing ground for the enemy of a demonic, because demons can use such people that are envious and lying and self-seeking. We all know what Satan was. Satan was the one that said the 5 I wills, didn't he, in the Old Testament? I will ascend to the gods. I will to God. I will. And so this can often bring demonic. We talk about the world, but when this happens in the church, and James is not speaking to the world here, he is speaking to Christians. When this happens, all hell breaks loose in a church. All hell breaks loose in a Christian community. I think one of the worst things ever are when there's church splits and fighting over who's going to be the leader, or leadership fighting, or and fighting on the church board or whatever it is, and people becoming no longer Christian, but all of a sudden wanting to deal with church issues, and there'll always be issues in church, but wanting to deal with them politically. I remember once in a church, there was an issue that did need to be looked at and different opinions on it. It's going to happen. But a group of people got together, some of the members, and they looked at the Constitution to see what their rights were. And then, just as if it was political parties in Parliament, they tried to politically push things in order to get their will. And you wouldn't have noticed them any different than I was brought up in Yorkshire, and I knew people who had dads and all that lot in local working men's clubs and stuff like that. And the way that they ran that was rough and tumble. And you wouldn't have, nothing to do with the Holy Spirit, just purely politicizing to get somebody's will done, right? And so that can open up for the demonic. The demonic loves that sort of thing. And it says that that selfish ambition, the word for selfish ambition, that it's combined with envy, is a word that's often used in the Greek for rivalry, partisan politics. It's the image, I'll just read it again for you, for where envy and self-seeking exist. So the self-seeking or selfish ambition is an image that appears of people in angry competition, undermining one another, each fighting for their own rights, which is a far cry from wisdom. And it says that for where envy and self-seeking exist, which I've just spoken about, confusion and every evil thing are there. And so we have to be careful. Even Paul says, don't use your freedom in Galatians 5 for the flesh or for sensuality. Remember, earthly sensuality. Don't use your freedom for sensuality, but in humility, serve one another in love, or be careful lest you bite and devour one another. So earthly wisdom, that is earthly, sensual, fleshly, demonic, yet people end up devouring one another. It's appalling. It's so destructive. And confusion exists in these times, and every evil thing are there. It brings it all in. So there we are in that section. And I labor that so that you can see the difference between the wisdom that is now from above. Listen to this. But the wisdom that's from above is first pure, then peaceable. Compare this to what I've just been talking about with the wisdom from below. First pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Wisdom from below is full of hypocrisy, because what you're doing is you're masking everything. You're putting on a mask, and behind that mask, you're a totally different person. but this is without hypocrisy. It's transparent, the wisdom that's from above. And the fruit of righteousness sown in peace by those who make peace. Let me just quickly unpackage this. We're not here to do everything, but just to give you a sample of what we do. So all wisdom, all ways of dealing with life, dealing with difficulties, dealing with people, dealing with situation, wisdom is, in the Bible, how do I deal with this God's way? That's what good wisdom is. How do I deal with this God's way? And wisdom is either from below, earthly, sensual, demonic. That's its source. That's where it comes from. It's a source. Or wisdom is sourced in heaven. Think about that. It's from above coming down. It's heavenly thinking. It's heavenly actions. First, pure. And when we look at the characteristic, and these are characteristics of a wise person, this is what a wise person looks like. A wise person is firstly pure. What does that mean? Well, it may mean that in order to be wise in any given situation, we first have to take our motivations to God for spiritual decontamination and illumination. The purity of motivation is the opposite of the motivation that comes from jealousy and envy and self-ambition. And so this is somebody that's dealing with a situation and doesn't want to be tainted with fleshly motivations, doesn't want to be motivated or energized by polluted desires, focusing on the speck in someone else's eyes. We are often liable to forget the log in our own. And this purity is someone coming to the Lord and saying, help me, Lord, with my logs. Help me, Lord, with my flesh. Help me, Lord, with my overreactions. Help me, Lord, to see, to be pure in my desire for reconciliation, in trusting you that you will accomplish for me what you want to. I don't have to fight for it. I don't have to manipulate. I don't have to use self-seeking methods. I don't have to have a go at somebody through envy. Help me, Lord, that in this situation I'm facing, to have as good a motivation towards you and the good things of God, and as good a motivation that I can have for the benefit of someone else that I can in my fallen state where I am right now. So it's in pressured situations where our impurities rise to the surface. And last week I spoke about our faith like gold being purified. And we had a little video on how you purify silver and gold. And so we're going to find that in these pressure points where we will be tempted to use wisdom from below, that the impurities, the self-seeking, the envy is going to come to the surface. But that's not bad if we recognize it's there. It's the impurities coming up for us to deal with. What is dangerous is if we don't recognize that that's what's motivating us, that we don't come to the Lord and say, Lord, help me with my motivations. And then we simply dismiss these things and become self-righteous. So decontamination and an openness to think that we're not actually acting 100% perfectly in this, and we're leaning on God and we're open for others to speak into us. We're not going to be perfect. So you'll never get oversensitive people listening to me tonight might spend their whole time soul searching in their situation and end up maybe blaming themselves when they're not to be blamed. But just this awareness in these situations of wisdom, awareness of what's going on. Sometimes in my life, I can feel something rising, and it might be envy or it might be self. And sometimes as I feel it rise, I sort of like say to myself, don't feel guilty, Bruce. Don't feel guilty. It's just the flesh. You can't help it. It's sort of like these thoughts or these reactions are there, but you know what? I'm going to deny them. I'm going to recognize them for what they are, but I'm not going to feel too bad I felt a bit jealous there, or a bit envious there. I'm just going to recognize there it is. It's coming up, but I recognize it, and God is helping me to be pure so that I see it. The biggest danger, the hugest danger is if these things come up and I think somehow they're righteous. Oh my goodness me, we're in for trouble there. Next one, peaceable. I'm going to stop in a few minutes. Peaceable, dealing with selfish ambition, jealousy, trying to purify yourself before the Lord, knowing that you won't be perfect, but just being aware, Lord, where am I in this? Am I being reasonable? These types of things will allow you to be more agreeable and more peaceful and less defensive and protective in your reactions. You'll be looking for a solution now instead of wanting to deal with that situation and smash it and use the wisdom from below that is fleshly, energized. You'll be like, wait, no, I have my opinions and I believe in them, and I'm not stepping down from my opinions, but I'm just watching my motivation behind them, and I'm going to deal with this. And although I'm going to stand up for what I believe in without hopefully being motivated by wrong motives, but I'm going to try and do this in a peaceable way. I'm not going to slug it out, be over defensive, protective. I want a solution. I want a win-win. And if I have to deal with this situation, if I have to take it and sort something out and be quite strong in it, then I'm prepared to do it. But I'm going to keep myself open to be corrected by the Lord and others. And I want to do it where, as far as it's left to me, there can be peace. As far as it's left to me, even if people disagree with me, and even if I'm saying, well, this is what I believe and I'm going to stand for this, I'm not going to back down for this, but I'm going to be open, let's do this in a peaceable way. Okay. Next one, gentle. Won't go to gentle is strength under control. That's basically what it is. Strength under control. It's not some sort of weak, gentle. It's strength, literally strength, well, not literally, but it means strength under control, and is used of emperors and commanders of forces who have powerful authority, powerful influence, but refuse to use it in a earthly, sensual way to get their own way. I'm the boss, and you jolly well do what I tell you, you'll get fired. That's not gentleness. But knowing you have the authority, but not using it in an inappropriate way to force something, purely because you're misusing it. Then open to reason. Not being entrenched. There's so much entrenchment. Whenever I've been involved in maybe helping different parties come together or work things out. It could be marriage counseling, to difficulties amongst other leaders or in the church or something like that. I always find one of the biggest difficulties is people that aren't open to reason. They're not open to reason. They're entrenched in their views and they won't budge. And basically, they just shut the doors. That's it. They're not open to reason. And anything that you say that doesn't fit their way of seeing it is dismissed or argued against. There's no sense of, well, let me think about that. When you speak to someone and someone says to you, and they're open to reason, you think, wow, okay, this is really positive. Even if they don't change their mind, they're open to reason. They will think it through. They won't argue immediately back to you because they're entrenched. But they'll go away and they'll think, I will think this through. I will think, tell me more about this. Could I be missing something? We shouldn't refuse to listen to the other side of the argument, or refuse to think that actually we might not be perfectly correct, but we might need to shift and realize, well, maybe I was a bit strong in that. Then I understand. Yes, I see. There's entrenchment, full of mercy. I don't think I need to say it's part of this, though, isn't it? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And in God's eyes, the merciful attitude towards others, forgiving people. Someone says, look, I'm sorry, I was too strong with you. I'm too strong. Yes, you were too strong with me. Yes, you were. Repent. But this sort of like, can't you see they're moving towards you? Well, I did feel you were a bit strong, but thank you for all of a sudden we're opening instead of closing off. And then impartiality, which is making sure that we treat people fairly, not having double standards. Sometimes we have to be careful because we see somebody that we don't particularly like or we think's a bit arrogant or whatever, and they're getting what they deserve. And if someone speaks to us, we'll say, yeah, let's get them, or I hope they get judged. It's that sort of like, don't like them anyway, I'm not going to step in. But if it was somebody in another situation that we like, in the same situation that we liked a lot, we might jump in to defend them. So someone we don't like or care about, we might just sort of like, I'm not bothered, so I'm not going to. But somebody in the same situation who we care about, we might stand up for them. And I don't know about you, but I've seen this in Christian leadership over 30 odd years, where sometimes somebody comes up and the leader's really good friends with them and everything like that. And then, and it's dealt with totally differently to someone that they're really not bothered about, interested in. It's sort of dismissed, or who cares? And that's not impartiality. And finally, sincerity, which just means genuine, the opposite to hypocritical, being two-faced. It's just a sort of genuineness, sincere, whether people believe you or not, you're being open, you're not hiding things, manipulating it behind a mask. Anyway, these are thoughts, but the difference between the two are amazing. And the thing is, if we go God's way and do this with prayer, then God will be pleased. And in the end, even if we lose a battle or two, we'll win the war. God will vindicate, and God will stand by, and God will send his Holy Spirit on people that move in wisdom from above. Thank you, Pastor Pete.